Okay, so as a reminder, so happy Friday, and as a reminder, the exam again is due Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Okay, again, you have to submit it through Blackboard. Okay, you can't just, you can't email it to me. In the past, I've had students email it to me, and that just was a mess. I'm not blaming the students. It's just, getting a lot of emails at once was kind of crazy. I'm also just so afraid of losing someone's exam in email. So because of that, that's why you have to submit it through Blackboard. If you do have trouble doing that, please contact me, okay? Please. Okay? I mean, if you don't contact me, then there's nothing I can do to help you, all right? So just make sure you contact me if you're having trouble submitting the exam through Blackboard. Someone asked me in the other class if you want to, after you take pictures of it, if you want to convert that into, what do you call it, a PDF, that's fine also. As long as I can read it, that's all I care about. All right. See that? There will be new homework next. It'll open on Sunday. I think a new quiz also, if I remember correctly. But again, you'll have like a week to complete them. The homework at least. The quiz, I'm not sure yet, but you'll have a few days to complete it. Any questions? Okay. So let's say I did also email the notes. Okay. So I'm going to start lecturing then. Okay, so let me start lecturing. Let me just stop sharing this so I can share the screen. Yes. All right. Oh, wrong button. Crap. Oh, good. Pressed the wrong button by mistake. I was afraid it would take too long. So, all right, here we go. All right, so we're in this section now, which is 1.2. We saw equations already. I think I did this last time, the beginning of this. I feel better doing it again. But last time we did see, in the previous section, we have seen equations, linear equations in one variable. There was some terminology we did with equations in general, a solution of an equation, the solution set, things like that. What you can do to solve an equation. Here we're going to look at, though, quadratic equations. So what we're going to look at here are quadratic equations. And we're going to see what they are. We're also going to see different ways of solving them. In particular, we're going to consider the methods of factoring and the quadratic formula. There are other methods you can use. There is something actually called the square root method, if I remember correctly. But again, for time consideration, I'm only focusing on these two because I think they're the most important. I mean, you get to see an application of factoring, and the quadratic formula, I think at least, is good to know. All right. So, yeah.
So do we need to know both, or can we just kind of like choose one and like run with that?
I would know both, because sometimes on exams, I would say solve by factoring, or I would say solve by the quadratic formula. So you should know both of them.
Gotcha, thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. Any other questions? Okay. So again, this is what a quadratic equation is. So by definition, a quadratic equation in the variable x, it's one that can be written this way. That can be written like this. And when I say can be written, I mean you can use those manipulations when solving an equation to write the equation like this. So it's equivalent to this equation, in other words. So the quadratic equation, it's equivalent to this one, in other words. Okay, now, And here again, A, B, and C are real numbers. A cannot be 0, though. This is actually what we call the standard form. Now, I know the exponent of 2 there, makes it look a little intimidating, but it's really not terrible. What's nice about these equations is that you cannot have more. Hold on. I'm just going to put my wrist guard on. You cannot have more than 2 real solutions. It is possible you could have no solutions, mostly because we're not dealing with complex numbers. It actually turns out by I think it's called from the fundamental theorem of algebra, there's always every quadratic equation has at least one solution. One solution, although that solution could be complex. So meaning it's not a real number. But you're not going to have more than 2 solutions. That's impossible. And again, we have 2 methods for solving these equations. We have factoring, and we have what's called the quadratic. And we can also have what's called the quadratic formula. Factoring and the quadratic formula. That is what we're going to have. That's are the methods we're going to use to solve. Okay. Now, let's get into factoring. So we're going to use the methods we saw earlier, those methods of factoring. All right. Now, to solve it by factoring, I am demonstrating through this process what you do. Essentially, what's going to happen is this. You're going to factor the quadratic completely. From each factor, you get a solution. So from here, for instance, we have x squared plus 7x plus 10 equal to 0, right? So let's say we want to solve this by factoring. Well, how would you factor this? Well, we have a trinomial, right? Polynomial, it's 3 terms. It's degree 2. And the leading coefficient's 1. So we need 2 numbers whose product in this case is 10 and whose sum is 7, right? You would need 2 integers whose product is the constant term and whose sum is the leading coefficient. So this product, the leading so the product has to be the constant term, and the sum has to be the coefficient of x. So for 10 and 7, let's try 5 and 2. Well, that's going to work because 5 times 2 is 10. 5 plus 2 is 7. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 plus 2 is 7. Good. Okay, so since those numbers work, that tells us the polynomial can be written as x plus 5 times x plus 2, like so. Okay, well, this was equal to 0, so this product is equal to 0. And that implies, so this product's equal to 0, but it turns out from there that either this has to be 0 or this has to be 0. And really from there, to solve this equation, it's enough to solve this equation and to solve this equation. So if you have a product equal to 0, at least one of the factors has to be 0. It's actually a very nice property about multiplication of real numbers. At least one of the products, one of the factors that is, must be 0. Okay, so if this product is 0, then either x plus 5 must be 0 and x plus 2 must be 0. And logically, that tells us, well, it's enough to solve this equation and this equation. That is to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So again, we set each factor equal to 0, and now we're going to solve that. Okay, so to solve the first equation, x plus 5 equal to 0, well, we're going to subtract 5 from both sides, as you can see. okay? And we get x, we bring the x down, we get x equals -5. Right? So solving this equation, we get x equals -5. And so x equals -5, that's one solution. That's one solution. For the next equation here, x plus 2 equal to 0, right? Same idea. We want to get x all alone, remember. Well, you can add or subtract the same thing to both sides. So just like we did over here, subtract 2 from both sides, and we get x equals -2. So that's the other solution. So the two solutions are -5 and -2.